Hi everybody, welcome to the final session in Elevating Digital Teams. Today's session is titled What Next? And Maximising the Value of RoleModelplus. So today our primary focus is going to be, hopefully everyone here has either attended a couple of the webinars before, already used RoleModelplus, or have an interest in using it. It's the same team that joined you from the first webinar. So it's myself, Ashley Larkin. I am a BCS Key Account Manager, and joining me today is my colleague, Andrew Barnett. If you want to introduce yourself, Andy.
Yep. Thanks very much, Ashley. And thanks again to everybody for spending the time today and for our colleague, Cara, for supporting. But as always, I hope you get some useful tidbits out of today's call. But yeah, very pleased to be here. Thanks, Ashley.
Fantastic. So today's session, as I mentioned, it's all around those who either already use RoleModelplus or have an interest or have at least seen a couple of the webinars beforehand. So what we're not going to do is talk about SFIA and SFIAplus and the differences. We're not going to go really granular into the system. The goal of today is to understand how to make the most of embedding RoleModelplus as a potential or current user and ultimately gain as much value through continued use. And we're going to do that by covering a few different things. Andrew and myself will recap a little system use. We're going to look over benchmarking again and what the individual experience is like using the system. And we're also going to provide some real world insights based on our current BCS clients. As one of our key account managers, I've worked with several different clients who have used the system. Andrew's been here for longer than me, 15 years. Is that right, Barney?
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah, thereabouts. So has lots of history of working with this, because today's big question is focused on what next. So we're going to start with the previous slide that we've used before, and I just want to use this. I'm just going to skip through this as an example to start a conversation with Andrew about, in our experience, where do you think this? What examples have you got of this being sort of long-term successful, Andrew? I know we spoke previously today around a large central government arm and them standing up in front of people to talk about why they use SFIAplus and RoleModel. Do you want to expand upon that, Barney?
Yeah. Thanks, Ashley. So this slide here is sort of is designed to sort of get across how many plates we have spinning or how complex these challenges are. And our job then is to make it really straightforward and clear for the individuals participating in this endeavor, which hopefully and can be very long term. So we very much focus on the individual, and we naturally then focus on the leadership team. They work hand in glove. We can't really provide the voluminous data that we can in terms of capabilities, skills, trends, etc., unless we've appealed to the individual who's sort of catered for on the left-hand side. So when it's working well, we've made those statements, sat alongside the leadership team. HR is a clear, a very key partner of ours as well. So everybody's understood what it is we're going to do. Now, we're not really going to reinvent the wheel. We're there really to complement or supplement their own agreed workforce planning agendas, if I can put it that way. And I know we'll get into some of the more specifics, but yeah, it's when we've communicated all of these things effectively to the various participants or audience members, staff, managers, HR, L&D, leadership, etc.
And can you just touch upon that specific example that we spoke about earlier? Because I think it's a really good example of a client being able to stand up and say what long-term value they've had from this in that specific government arm.
It's yeah, I can't name certain clients, but we have for over 15 years worked with a particular government entity. I think one of the largest departments. They're about 4,000 strong now. But we started working with them because they were wanted to limit their use of certain external contractors and contracts. So they therefore had to understand as a first port of call for most of our relationships with clients is to understand their capability. And at that time, they chose to use SFIA as the language, or SFIAplus in our case. Now they obviously use government digital data, which we've now woven into the equation as well. But it was part of a parliamentary accounts committee review. I was told to look at they actually televised it, and the CDIO at the time was being quizzed, if I can put it that way. And one of the things they were asked is, do you know the current capability of your teams, knowing probably full well how complicated and difficult that is to ascertain? Thankfully, and written in the subsequent report, which I found and still keep to this day, he was able to say with confidence, yes, I do have a good understanding of the capability. And he was directly referring to, because they were talking about their IT and digital teams, the work that we do. And 15 plus years later, we had a similar blog or case study written by another government entity that said pretty much exactly the same thing. So yeah, understanding capability is pretty 101 to us, and it's really the catalyst for change. I think being a professional body is useful to to get the ball rolling in these matters. But yeah, that was the example we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think that really drives home the sort of the management or the sort of organizational viewpoint of where this has long-term success. But I just want to touch upon next around, so we were speaking about this earlier, the way this has real sort of long-term effectiveness and can ultimately be hopefully used to change an organization's development culture, is that it's appealing for an individual to use. So I'm just going to neatly hand over to you, Andrew. If we could go through some of how an individual could use this as part of the day-to-day. As part of the preamble for today's meeting, we spoke about how this can be used as part of the day-to-day for sort of long-term benefits. So, and for me and for us, I think that having a tool set that is attractive for an individual to use, but also is then actioned upon by the organization, I think is really valuable. So I'm just going to hand over to you, Andrew, if you could take us through that bit, please.
Thanks. And can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, we're all aware of, in any organization, there's those people who are super engaged and they'll just find a way to seek out opportunities for themselves, which is great and will make their lives a little bit more straightforward and efficient. The mainstay of people we're really catering for, and those potentially disengaged from the process also. And how we go about doing that, and I'll try and talk and push buttons at the same time, it's always a challenge for me, is to simply provide evidence that the intention of the organization is to develop their staff. It's not uncommon for us to be responding to things that have been identified in staff surveys. I don't have any development, I can't see any career progression, etc., etc. We know that's sort of the wheelhouse we're in, and with a professional body hat on as well, we can say in all good conscience that we are really invested in the individual. We also have frameworks that we can use. We use ancient government frameworks as well, but take SFIA as an example. If an organization wants to future-proof their skills, I don't have a magic ball, but I can say that SFIA, if you're using SFIA or SFIAplus, that in itself iterates. So if you're using that information to inform your roles and your development, etc., when it iterates, you've got half a chance of keeping more up to date, and we have processes in the system that does that for you. For me, when we were talking earlier, actually, it was really thinking about the times when it's working really well and when we have real success. It's when we can do things like say to people, this is the evidence. So, and that would manifest itself in this way. I'm only on one screen, so it is a bit challenging, so I can't see a reaction actually. So just chip in, please, if I'm going off topic a little bit. Thanks. So I'm in the system. Confusingly, I can see every single button in this particular environment. So most people would just see an area called My Development. And you might have noticed right off the bat, the system is all about professional development, about change, being adaptable to change, etc., etc. And we go to great lengths to position what the framework's all about, our stance, and largely echoing the points and ambitions of the organization. So we wouldn't be doing this if we hadn't reached alignment, because when we are on the ground and working, this is something for everyone in the IT team. It's never an elective. It's like we're doing this and we're doing it because we know we have to. and we'll be in a better place because of it. So, but evidence-based from an individual, I won't go into the benchmarking again, but suffice to say, we assumed a level of understanding of frameworks, how to use them, selection of skills would equate to role at various levels, that kind of thing. But once an individual, and the advantage of using systems like this is once I have a benchmark done, most people will say, okay, I'll do the benchmark. I understand the value of using things like SFIA in particular, because wherever I end up going, that is a language and for industry perspective that's going to value that individual. That's something that is fairly well established, I would say. But as soon as that benchmark is ratified by their manager or a subject matter expert, and they're off and running with their own development, let's say that one of their bugbears was transparency around potential moves. In a tool like this, I can see, I'm in a demo site, thankfully, I can see that the moment, because you've made a decision to use frameworks, plural, it's not just one, it's this system can have many frameworks. You can use them all to inform your roles. But assuming you've used the same frameworks for all your roles, it will automatically show that person, and therefore hopefully underlining your statements around we want to encourage lateral mobility, vertical mobility. You can construct a career pathway if you so choose. We're not going to look at that today, but you can. But this will just show you that it's basically telling me, based on what we already know about you, Andrew, you happen to be a skills match for, in this case, it was one of the government roles. So the GDAD roles, previously DDAT. So it tells me I'm a 75% match. If I clicked on that, it would say what skills I'm a one-to-one match for, what skills I need to develop, what skills I don't have. And let's assume that this is now an aspirational move for me, because I know we'll probably look at professional development planning later on. I can click on that role and work towards it. Now, enormous amount of organizations would dearly love to have the ability to have that transparency, have that consistency, to show to their staff that if they're currently staff, if it's appropriate, there are moves that you can do. What I can do now in reality is begin to benchmark against this role. It might not be available now, but I can benchmark against the skills and a new development just to get this out there. You can now add evidence. This is a requirement from some of our government clients, so we've developed it. If I clicked on a skill, I can add evidence written form. I can also add documentation. Now I can just park that. So if the system, another user of the system might say, well, there's a role that's come up. If it's this role, I'm automatically in frame. So that it really does start to encourage that mobility. But again, as I say, you're providing clear evidence to your staff that this is what you intend to do. Now, I'll take this opportunity, Asif, if I may, because I think we both agreed it was important. And for me, it's a behavior demonstrated by clients who are really thought about this. If I'm going to do a benchmark, we will absolutely identify skills gaps. We'll also identify and give people the opportunity to say, I'm overskilled. We'll look at that later. But it's really important to get ahead of what is normally an anxiety-inducing process. If you're going to do a benchmark, why are we doing it? So just to be everyone's mindful of that. So it's also really important, whilst I'm benchmarking against, this happens to be a target role or an aspirational move, it could very well be my own role. But when you're constructing the roles, and if you're using learning management systems or you work with BCS in different ways, there'll be learning that you could attach to the role, whether it's a qualification, you can keep it in, whether it's a learning pathway that might sit on an LMS system, maybe it's something we've helped you construct at any point. I'm not going to do it, but this is something I've literally lifted and shifted from another environment. It happens to be a membership e-badge around ethics. I've already added it to my development plan or my development list, which we'll look at later. But again, it's linking the two things together, how you want people to work in terms of role profiles and good practices, when gaps will be identified, and again, they will, what do you intend to do about it? So the ability to link learning to roles is again, really, really critical. And it's often sometimes an afterthought, and we can respond to the data, absolutely, but it's better just to, again, to underline your ambition to develop people is to recognize the advantage and the value of adding in specific targeted learning to any given roles. So I'll pause for breath there, Ashley. Is that what we were just talking about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you can see here, and I'll come on to a question shortly, is having it. Lots of organizations we work with will do a rollout and then everyone will benchmark and it's fantastic. But having that iterative benchmarking process, both against your role and the role you want to work into, is creating an environment that's focused on professional development. Because if you looked at those percentage dials, you'll be able to see the progress you're making every time you do a new benchmark and every time that's approved. So that 75%, I might benchmark myself against that and see progress. And it really fills into fundamentally the organizations that we work with successfully who do this level of implementation want to shift themselves to being a development organization. So, and for that to be successful, I know we were talking about this earlier, Andrew, is it can't just be lip service around those development goals. There has to be sort of real tangible benefits for an individual doing this. IT people are really smart. If you put this in front of people and it's just a performance management piece, they're going to cotton onto it really quickly. If this is something that's going to have real tangible benefit onto their professional development, then you're going to see this double and hopefully see that sort of culture shift around towards that ideal of developing your own talent rather than hiring expensive internal talent, which is one of the real valuable pieces from that. I'm just going to pause there because we've had a question come in from our audience that I want to link to. Just find that while the system's running quite slowly. For linking to learning resource is dependent on copying and pasting links or can RoleModelplus more natively integrate with learning management systems. Do you want to answer that, Andrew?
Did you say it a bit slower? I think I got it.
Sorry. For linking to learning resources,
yeah,
is it dependent on copy/pasting links or can RoleModelplus more natively integrate with learning management systems?
Okay, so I had a conversation this morning about APIs and LMS systems and other systems. So APIs is still on our roadmap for development. Currently, in our tool, we have an area that's we've compiled a list of learning and links that when we're constructing a role, it's relatively straightforward. If I'm building a role that's part of a BA job family, I would have had a link which I can add in. So technically, you're adding the links in. Can it go off and interrogate learning management environments? It will do. That's a conversation because BCS is that we have a whole portfolio of things like that. So the data that comes out, we've already done a couple of experiments of using AI to say this is the skills deficit for individual A, where in this environment would the skills lend itself. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but as it stands right now, it's just a simple case of creating a framework, creating a link to a LMS system and embedding it in a role, which is a 2-minute job. But no, didn't want to use the word AI today, but I just did. But that's one of the areas we're exploring, and I think it lends itself very well because one of the challenges we hear about LMS systems, unless they've been configured, and some have configured to certain government roles, people find it difficult perhaps to find the appropriate learning. Our learning skills, how we describe learning deficits, can be relatively high level. It can be extremely focused to a particular work activity. That sounds to me like a job for AI and something we've done, and I think pretty successfully. We've got some work in progress with our books portfolio as an example. So currently cut and paste to answer the question. Very soon we're going to be using other methods, more intuitive methods to link the two, and rightly so.
Just to sort of add a final piece to that, I think you highlight that really well, Andrew. We are very much a client-led development organization when it comes to RoleModelplus. So we know that there's a certain shift in the market for this product to move towards sort of AI and other integrations with LMS, and that's definitely a way we're moving towards at the moment. At the moment, it's a way of really nicely signposting towards like learning interventions rather than sort of directly interrogating or linking to them. Andrew, is it all right if we've only got a few minutes left on this because we've
Yeah.
absolutely flown by? If we just touch a little bit on the what we spoke about earlier of that sort of consistent use around using it as part of a development list and professional development plan, and then
Yeah.
maybe just finish with a crescendo of reporting would be wonderful.
A crescendo. Okay, I'll try. So yeah, just to follow that user experience through. So again, we've adopted the persona of an individual. We've looked at how that person might be or how other roles are signposted based on some ratified skills. So they have this concept of this currency of skills. You might have spotted you can see myself through a lens of a role, but also I have this skill set derived from various frameworks, even to the point of work activities or behaviors or knowledge and skills. So a lot of granular stuff, which is useful if you think about navigating through. What we're looking at here is from a range. This is this insane amount of skills gaps. I would like to suggest. Others might disagree. But it's through using the system a lot. But I have a list of things that are on my development list. Um, so, and my manager has agreed that these are things you're not doing that we need you to be doing. Normally there wouldn't be this many, but there would be a fair number, of which going to professional development, this is the day to day. You can see here I have 2 development plans. One's aspirational, one's the day to day, my current role. So just we can have, again, just to the point about underlining again, aspirational moves are available and we can accommodate those future gazing aspirations for people. But let's look at goals here for one. Of the goals I've added, the objective here is to pick of that vast list what 2, 3, or 4 things are going to be working on in the next period. Now what we find also in terms of changing behaviors, we don't find people using this once a year. It's just an activity. People use it, understand that it's about continual professional development, and we monitor that in the system, we can track it. So it's not just an annual process. But of the list, if I was going to add something to my plan, just really quickly, you would do it this way. Categorize.
Just
Sorry,
while you're doing that, Andrew, I think that you touched upon something really key there is around sort of the regularity of use. I think if you embed the benchmarking process or to any sort of informal appraisals you have, either quarterly, biannually, or annually, then you're going to see some value. But it's encouraging individuals to sort of update this as and when, rather than just sort of that as we see with lots of different learning and development organizations focusing on doing your appraisal a few days before you have the sort of that quarterly or annual meeting with your manager. If you can see that consistent movement, then it provides real value.
yeah.
Sorry, if you want to continue.
And mirroring, if you recall, the ability of a person to put a stake in the ground for a role. Some organizations will require adding evidence. So whether it's a certificate, whether it's an explanation of a successful project, as with that, with the professional development planning, one of the things here we've selected a training activity, something that may result in a certificate of completion. Again, that is evidence that you can add should you require to do so. So the whole end-to-end professional development planning is, as you say, catered for as well. And because more and more organizations attribute this sort of activity with pay, I'm not going to go into it today, but we monitor and report and track on completed plans, closed plans, evidence of planning, evidence of activity in this realm as well. And I can't promise a crescendo actually, but I will go to browse framework and sorry, not browse framework, forgive me, reporting. Give me buttons. I think a scenario we started to touch on earlier was around candidate analysis, so it was in my mind. I can search for, just to cover this off really quickly, some people who use this tool to work in HR. If a role has come up, its team is expanding or someone may have left, again, you can just purely based on capability, interrogate the data to search for correct matches for any given role. You could have even created a brand new role and done the same thing. So again, you can interrogate the data in many ways. Just the workforce planning one which actually sort of informed our career pathways. But the reporting that I had the pleasure of testing, one of them, I love the heat map view. So you can have 60,000-foot view of your skills. It shows a heat map of skills, where you have skills, where you don't have skills, etc. What we have time for is, bear with me. This again is working on all the validated skills data, and I can look at it, the information, if I'm interested in a particular role, if I'm interested in a particular skill or a particular piece of raw data, and if I'm using a third-party system to churn up data, I can do so. But let's just look at teams. One scenario that me and Ashley both like. Yes, of course, we can understand capabilities and describe skills gaps. We've been doing it for almost 2 decades, so that's fine. But one thing, when people have perform benchmark, is they have the option. They when they're benchmarking against a skill, they can say, you need to be level 3 at X. They can actually say, well, actually, I'm a level 4. So you now can capture that, the concept of people being overskilled in certain things. Now, because a manager would have agreed with them, that's why the data's here. We can toggle this quickly and say to ourselves, well, there's a group or growing number of people in the BA community or BA team in this limited sandbox environment, 14% with a 14% overskilling. Now, that was a trend I would want to know, because that, in terms of retention, for me and Ashley, I think we spoke about earlier, this information may go hand in glove with the ability to engage with those people. What are they thinking of doing? Are they just not stretched enough? Do we pitch the role too low? Let's assume it's just they're getting bored in their role. If that is the case, you would then turn their gaze to the role pathway piece we looked at earlier. Maybe that BA would want to use a development pathway, which we've helped inform with certain organizations, to become a solutions architect. That's great because you retain a person with lots of business knowledge. You can demonstrate again, we want to grow our own, and you've helped them understand that there is that role in maybe a slightly different part of the business, purely based on skills matching. So that is
just going to stop you there, Andrew.
Sorry,
just because we're rapidly running out of time, so I appreciate that. But we've had another question come in saying, can the role definition work the other way around? I look at our people and automatically define the roles according to their competencies, thinking about getting maximal value from existing teams. Now, this brings up something we spoke about earlier, is that the system has so many different functionalities, and the way we've gone through this is how a sort of full embedding works for RoleModelplus, where there's lots of different ways that you can potentially utilize the system. And we put this in the hands of really smart IT people who sort of come up with ingenious ways of using the system. I would say there is some of that functionality we've gone over slightly, is that if you have individuals, and some organizations do this, it's just do sort of a global skills benchmarking or skills survey, and have roles predefined in the system. Then once they've done any form of benchmarking, either against frameworks or against specific roles, is you can look at the match of roles they currently have. It's not going to define the roles it's not going to build roles automatically for them, but it's going to help see who has the best fit for that role based on competencies. So absolutely, you could do it that way around. And some organizations will use this piece of software just to define job roles. Some will use it to just do a global skills survey. Some will use it for the level of depth of embedding of the sort of we've gone through today. We've defined sort of the standard embedding process, because this is how we see clients get the most value from it, because it sort of leads to an overall culture shift. But absolutely, there's so many different ways you can use that system. So I know we've gone horribly over, which is terrible of us, but I'm just going to quickly share my screen so we can share our contact information, and if there's any more questions that
if I may, that last question was really interesting, because it did touch on, again, using the word AI twice in the conversation. There, it's a sort of a bookend for us. We're running a program at the moment using AI to interpret current job descriptions. We've had conversations internally with our leadership team about how the person, when they put that scenario to us, how we would manage that. But there are more traditional ways of tackling it, which you've touched on as well. So the kind of thing we'd love to have the more in-depth conversation about that.
What a great segue. And speaking for more in-depth conversation, so if anyone watching wants to talk more about using role model, either they already do or are looking to, please contact us at our team's email, which is developmyteam@pcs.uk. Happy to field any more questions. We're running over, but if people are happy to, then we can do. But if not, then we will wish you all a good day. So just giving anyone a minute if there's any more questions coming in. I think we've covered everything. And then just say thank you, Andrew, for joining us on this webinar series. I think it's been really valuable. I think we could talk about RoleModelplus and SFIAplus and DDAT and GDAD for hours. So if there are people who want to sort of have that conversation with us and about what this could potentially look like for your organisation or team, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Either drop us an email, connect with us on LinkedIn. The usual channels will always work. Well, I've filibustered long enough, and I don't think there's any more questions coming in. So I'm happy to call this to an end. So thank you very much again for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for your time.
My name's Ashley, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you. So have a wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are.
Thanks very much.
Everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.